Panelists, please turn your cameras back on.
Greetings to the members of the Illinois Legislature, guests, and all who serve Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Welcome. My name is Jacari Henderson, and I am the president of the Gamma Kappa Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is the oldest Greek letter service organization established by the African American college-educated women. It was founded on January 15, 1908 at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and in 2021 celebrated its 113th year of serving all mankind. Through our international programs, exemplifying excellence through sustainable service, our programming centers on education, health, building strong families, environmental sustainability, and community concerns. The Gamma Kappa Omega chapter was chartered on March the 15th, 1941 in Carbondale, Illinois. Gamma Kappa Omega chapter has been serving the Carbondale community and Southern Illinois communities for 80 years. I am happy to serve as the president of the Gamma Kappa Omega chapter. On behalf of the Gamma Kappa Omega chapter, it gives me pleasure to bring this phenomenal event to highlight phenomenal women during Women's History Month. What a time to be a woman. Just 2 months ago, we watched America install its first woman of color, HBCU graduate, and member of the illustrious organization of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. What a magical and monumental moment 20th was and is today. As we continue to fight, protect, support, and highlight all women, today we highlight these amazing women serving as panelists, moderators, and guests embracing their experiences as Illinois legislators. Not to mention, they are all members of the illustrious organization of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, providing service to all mankind in all that they do. To our Illinois legislatures, GKO welcomes you and thanks you for your hard work, dedication, and sacrifices in ensuring women and people of color have a seat at the table. Ensuring advocacy, education, and movement on the forefront of your careers locally, statewide, and in our federal offices. We value you and we appreciate you. To our special guest, Illinois Lieutenant Governor, Mrs. Juliana Stratton, thank you for being a barrier breaker and leading with excellence. She is an example of service and advocacy in our communities. Lieutenant Governor Ms. Juliana Stratton serves as the Illinois 48th Lieutenant Governor. She is the first African-American to hold the office. Mrs. Stratton is passionate about equity and putting passion into government policy making. Her portfolio includes leading the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative and chairing the Illinois Council of Women and Girls, the Governor's Rural Affairs Council, the Military Economic Development Council, and the Illinois Rivers Coordinating Council. She is the chair of the R3 board, which is Restore, Reinvest, Renew, and she co-chairs the Opiate Prevention and Recovery Steering Committee. Lieutenant Governor Stratton currently serves as treasurer of the National Lieutenant Governors Association. Previously, Mrs. Juliana Stratton represented the 5th District in the Illinois House of Representatives. Her first elected office was serving as the chair of the Kenwood Academy Local School Council. As a lifelong advocate for youth in creating safe space for our young people, Lieutenant Governor Stratton is a restorative justice practitioner and trained peace circle keeper. She believes that where there is a void, we must take action to fill that need. Juliana Stratton was born and raised on the South Side of Chicago. She is a proud graduate of University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and DePaul University College of Law. She and her husband, Brian, live in the Brownsville community and have 4 daughters. Now, the moment that everyone has been waiting for, I am honored to bring to you my sorority sister, Lieutenant Governor, Mrs. Juliana Stratton.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, and happy Women's History Month to the illustrious women of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I greet you from Chi Omega Chapter in Chicago. To President of Gamma Kappa Omega Chapter, Jacari Henderson, thank you so much for that warm introduction and for all you do and all that your team does every single day to exemplify excellence through sustainable service. To the past presidents of Gamma Kappa Omega, and to my amazing colleagues and sisters in public service, all of whom I know and love, and to the special guest and all of those who are joining us from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated this afternoon, it is truly an honor to be of service to all mankind alongside you all. I am absolutely thrilled to be joining you today for Pink in Politics, or is it Politics in Pink? I'm sorry if I get that incorrectly, but I know that we're in our pink and I know that we're talking about politics. And this is a discussion of the significance of women that are leading in the political landscape. And you're in for a real treat today because today's panel includes some truly dynamic women who are change makers in our state, and their stories are truly powerful. By the way, I was so excited to be back in Carbondale just yesterday. I started my day at Common Grounds Coffee House for a hot cup of tea. And then Governor Pritzker and I were over at the Carbondale Civic Center, a state-run max vaccination site, to talk about our administration's goal of helping all Illinoisans know when, where, and how they can get vaccinated. We also thanked the dedicated men and women of the Illinois National Guard who are helping to vaccinate so many in Southern Illinois. And as I closed out with lunch at the SIU campus, I thought about my husband, Brian, who some of you may know is a proud Saluki, so Carbondale is always so close to our hearts. Civil rights and women's rights activist Dorothy Height said these words: "I want to be remembered as someone who used herself and anything she could touch to work for justice and freedom. I want to be remembered as someone who tried." I want to begin my remarks this afternoon by taking a moment to reflect on Dorothy Height's words and what they mean in the political landscape that we find ourselves in today. We are in the midst of 3 distinct crises, distinct yet interrelated. The crises of COVID-19, the economic crises, and the crises of systemic racism. And while so many want to talk about unity and coming together, for many of us in our communities, coming together requires sacrifices that, quite frankly, we are no longer willing to give. Dorothy Height spoke of both justice and freedom. And what I love about her words is that she said that she would use herself and anything that she touched in pursuit of justice and freedom. She recognized that even if she didn't see that final and most absolute state of liberty and equal justice under the law for all, she will at least have known that she had tried. That's all that any of us can do. We know that we can't rely on our existing broken systems to deliver the justice and equality that our ancestors and tragically so many others gave their lives for. Hence that great African-American proverb that so many of us know all too well: we're all we got. As Black women, We have moved beyond just taking our seat at the table. We understand that we must build our own tables and gain the decision-making power and influence necessary to dismantle these systems and build them back better. In this past election, we saw the results of organizing and mobilizing Black Americans in getting out the vote. Stacey Abrams, Nsé Ufot, LaTosha Brown, Helen Butler, Deborah Scott, Tamika Atkins, and I could go on and on, carried the often overlooked tradition of voting rights activism that has been led by Black women. This is our torch to carry, and it is on us and our allies to make sure that history does not forget. Black Americans, Black women in particular, did this. As was already mentioned, in January of this year, we all celebrated the historic inauguration of our fellow member, Kamala Harris, as the first woman elected Vice President of the United States and the first Black and Asian American person to hold that office. We celebrate the trailblazers who paved the path, women like Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan, all names we know. But we also celebrate the names, so many names, that we don't know. Vice President Harris is proof of the progress that we are making. But we also know that there are far too many doors of opportunities that have been closed for far too many for far too long. There are still too many spaces in our democracy where what was meant to be a representative government simply fails to be a representation of us all. And despite our courageous efforts throughout history, our activism and the vital role that we play has often been diminished, if not entirely omitted. Among the fearless women on the front lines of the suffrage movement were Black women who had the additional challenge of battling systemic racism, just as we do today. I marvel at Black activist Ida B. Wells and her courage during the first suffrage parade in Washington, D.C. in 1913. She and 60 other Black women were told to move to the back of the line. And Wells said, either I go with you or not at all. And she marched right alongside them. Ida B. Wells was not just an inspiration to me as a Black woman in politics, but one who endured so much so that we could all stand here today with the ability to make our voices count. We must always remember and uphold the legacy of the fight for the right to vote. And today's Politics in Pink event is a powerful example of what can happen when we bring our full and authentic selves to the work of freedom and justice. We come together today in honor of Sojourner Truth, who asked, "Ain't I a woman?" when asked if Black women should be part of the fight for women's rights. We come today in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer, who was arrested for leading a voter registration drive in 1964. She was beaten so badly that she had permanent damage to her kidneys, eyes, and legs. Well, I don't know about you, but like Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Sick and tired of Black women getting paid pocket change for every dollar that a man earns. Sick and tired of seeing working women being gunned down in Atlanta this past week, a glaring and tragic case of not just anti-Asian hatred and racism, but of anti-women hatred and misogyny. Sick and tired of criminalizing our children with police presence in schools, where our Black girls often face the harshest discipline and are pushed out of school as early as preschool, just for being their vibrant, creative, and curious selves. Sick and tired of seeing videos of unarmed Black men being killed by police with no regard for their humanity and with no accountability in sight. Sick and tired of asking why Sandra Bland died in police custody in Texas. Sick and tired of waiting for justice for Breonna Taylor, shot to death in her own bed, in her own home. Sick and tired of systemic racism that has infected our housing system, our education system, our banking system, our food system, and yes, our criminal justice system. So every day, like all of you, I ask myself, what can I do to stop being so sick and tired? How can I, like Dorothy Height, use my full self and everything that I touch to work for justice and freedom? And that is the energy that I bring to serving as the first Black lieutenant governor in our state's 202-year history and the first Black woman to serve as a constitutional officer in our state. This is a defining moment for our nation as it sets to dismantle the systemic oppression and discrimination of African Americans across our country in a commitment to live up to its ideals of equality. And if not now, when? You know, my father marched in Selma and, like John Lewis, saw the need to really get into some good trouble. The children of that moment, like me and like many of you and like Vice President Harris, had a stroller-eyes view of what it meant to be actively involved in the struggle. We are a part of the legacy of voting, driving policy, and elevating equality for women. You all are on the front lines of politics, medicine, social work, education, business, and more. You are all fierce, and you are a force as you continue to remain civically engaged, and you will continue to shape the leadership and tone of policy in this country. Little girls have role models in all of us as their mothers, as their sisters, grandmothers, aunts, leaders of legacies from the past. Talk to them and share your stories and let them know that you are exercising the right to advocate for the principles of honesty and fairness, of justice and freedom, that you are fighting for their economic liberation so they can have it easier than we did. We must continue to do this work and continue pushing on and talk about the role that each of us play in forging the path forward, creating possibilities and opportunities for all those who come after us. Now, following today's event, I hope that you will take a moment over the next week to reflect on the awesome power that we possess, how we can use that power and have used it to inspire movements, and what we can do with that power in the future. Our work is far from over, but you are making a difference, whether you are elected to office or not. We are all motivated every single day in service to all mankind, but you don't have to be elected to office to have an impact on policy or the direction of our state, our nation, or our world. You simply have to have a real heart for your community, and an even bigger heart for the people of your community. And I know you do, because otherwise you wouldn't be here today. Now more than ever, our brothers, our sisters, our allies recognize that Black women are the voice of the future, and our time is now. And as I said, we no longer just demand a seat at the table. We're bringing our own tables. We're building our own tables. And we are making it abundantly clear that we no longer want policy to be made for us. We want policy to be made with us and by us. I want to thank you again for having me today. And if you would indulge me for just 2 more minutes, I just want to close with a final message that I think really relates to our power and the ability to get things done on behalf of ourselves, our families, and our communities, because this year has been incredibly tough. A year that we've had to maintain physical distance from our loved ones, a year where we have not been able to gather with our family and our friends, our coworkers, our sorors, to celebrate or even to grieve together. I lost my father-in-law in November, and we couldn't even hug each other as our tears started to flow. A year with so many in our communities and workplaces and homes and schools feeling the stress and the anxiety and the mental health toll of a global pandemic, which is unlike anything that we have experienced in our lifetimes. So earlier this week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. to be exact, I went to a hospital on the south side of Chicago where I got my first of 2 COVID-19 vaccine doses that were administered right in my upper left arm. And once I received the shot, the doctor said, "Lieutenant Governor, how do you feel?" And I said immediately, "I feel amazing." There was simply no other way to describe it. Because as I sat down in that chair and rolled up my sleeve, it was as if the last 365 plus days just flashed through my mind. And I knew at that moment that if enough of us have been vaccinated and build immunity, we can get back to our pre-COVID routines and end this pandemic. And I wanted nothing more than to do my part. So I completed all the forms and the checklist. I asked all the questions. And to my surprise, the vaccine was quick, it was painless, and it was over before I knew it. I waited 15 minutes so that they could observe me to see if I had any reactions. And then I went home and went on about my day. And I had such an overwhelming feeling of relief. And I couldn't wait to mark my calendar for April 6th, when I get to go back and get my second dose. I share this personal story of getting vaccinated because when it is your turn, I want to encourage all of you to make an informed decision to get vaccinated as well. COVID-19 has devastated our community. And even still, we are here. We are still blessed. And we've been given another opportunity to love and to serve and to make a difference. So I encourage each and every one of you to get vaccinated when you are eligible to do so, and talk to your loved ones, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, everyone you know about getting vaccinated too, because it is the very best way for us to return to some semblance of normalcy and to continue to share our gifts with the world. Thank you again for organizing this fantastic event and for stepping up and carrying the mantle of those who came before us. The work of justice and freedom continues, and it begins with each and every one of us. Thank you, and enjoy the panel discussion.
To the Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for that historical, inspirational, motivational, and powerful testimony, and the ongoing clarion call to stay on the wall until the labor is done. Thank you. I had the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our dynamic moderator and our panelists for today's event. I realize that some of you are looking in and also listening in on Zoom. So I am going to read every single word that is printed on the screen for the benefit of those who are unable to see. Beginning with Dr. Pamela Smoot, Professor, SIU, Carbondale. Dr. Pamela Smoot is a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She graduated from Tennessee State University with a Bachelor of Science in History and Government and Public Affairs and a Master of Arts degree in History and Education. She has an earned doctorate from Michigan State University in American History with emphasis on Black America. Dr. Smoot is also an archivist, receiving her training at Detroit's Wayne State University and the National Archives and Records Administration in Washington, D.C. She is an alumnus of highly competitive and prestigious Hearst Summer Institute for Women in Higher Education at Bryn Mawr College, earning a certificate in leadership and administrative training. Dr. Smoot has been employed at SIU for almost 20 years as a faculty member and as the Director of Recruitment, Retention, and Outreach in the College of Liberal Arts. She is currently an assistant professor in the Department of History, where her specialty courses include Struggle, Resistance, and Survival, the History of African American Women, Blacks on the Western Frontier, and Black Lives Matter. As the former Director of Recruitment, Retention, and Outreach for the College of Liberal Arts, Dr. Smoot successfully coordinated the university's first SIU Day, a campus-wide recruitment effort bringing more than 600 Southern Illinois high school students to the campus for a day of exciting hands-on activities. She is the faculty advisor to the SIUC chapter of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs and serves on several university committees, including the Dr. Alexander Lane Internship Selection Committee, the Intercollegiate Athletics Advisory Committee, and the Board of Directors of the SIUC Students Legal Assistance Program. Dr. Smoot is also the recipient of the Diversity Excellence Award, Faculty Woman of the Year, the Outstanding Faculty Award, the Living Legend Award, and the Phoenix Appreciation Award, to name a few. Her accolades are attributed to her commitment to education and an advocate for students. She is also, obviously, a member, active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Kahalah Clay, St. Clair County Circuit Clerk. Mrs. Kahalah A. Clay, Esquire, was appointed to the office of Clerk of the Circuit Court in January of 2011 and elected to the office in 2012. Kahalah successfully ran for re-election in 2016 and 2020. Kahalah, a native of East St. Louis, Illinois, attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and Indiana University, Robert H. McKinney School of Law. As an attorney, Kahalah was a full-time public defender, and she also practiced in the private sector, primarily in the area of family law. Prior to becoming appointed circuit clerk, Kahalah was an assistant state's attorney with the St. Clair County State's Attorney's Office. Kahalah is the first African-American and the first female circuit clerk in St. Clair County history. During her administration, Kahalah has been at the forefront of technological initiatives that make the circuit clerk's office more efficient and provide court patrons with greater access to the courts. Kahalah has been appointed to many committees by the Illinois Supreme Court, including the Commission on Access to Justice, the Commission on Pretrial Practices, and the Court Data and Performance Measures Task Force. Kahalah sat on the executive board of the Illinois Association of Court Clerks and ascended to become the first African-American president in association history. In January of 2020, Kahalah was appointed to the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Kahalah is married to Associate Circuit Judge William Clay IV, and they celebrate 2 sons and 1 daughter. The Honorable Stephanie D. Coleman, Alderman, 16th Ward. Alderman Stephanie D. Coleman, proclaimed a history maker by the Chicago Citizen. The Chicago Tribune called her, quote, a go-getter. The Chicago Sun-Times wrote, she, quote, shows real energy and a sincere interest in working for the constituents she now represents. 16th Ward Alderman and Democratic Committeeman Stephanie D. Coleman, a statuesque millennial, is now the youngest African-American member in the history of the city of Chicago City Council, winning endorsements from all 3 of these influential newspapers and garnering a decisive 67% of the votes in the last municipal election. Alderman Coleman is a lifelong 16th Ward resident, an agent of change, and an inspiration to others. Although known as the daughter of Inglewood, she serves Chicago Lawn, Gage Park, and New City. Alderman Coleman is the daughter of Pastor David and Bishop Shirley Coleman, who instilled in her strong ethics of deep faith and hard work. Her mother was 16th Ward Alderman during the administration of former Mayor Richard M. Daley. Alderman Coleman has been the elected Democratic committeeman of that ward since 2016, serving the community with distinction, and is the Democratic champion in registering the most voters in Cook County. While in that capacity, Committeeman Coleman was a 2017 delegate to the prestigious Illinois Women Institute of Leadership Training Academy and was city vice chairman of the Cook County Young Democrats. Alderman Coleman is the founder and CEO of the Sons and Daughters of Inglewood. She served as Vice President of the Moran Park Advisory Council and an active member and participant in Residents Association Greater Inglewood. Stephanie Coleman is driven by the philosophy of community, bringing neighbors together by hosting many popular events such as community picnics and an annual seniors and veterans ball. Alderman Coleman currently serves on 5 city committees and is the vice chair of the City of Chicago Aldermanic Black Caucus. Among the many accolades she has received, she has been honored with the 2018 Chicago Defender Women of Excellence Award, the Young Women's Professional League, the Class of 2017 40 Under 40 Award, and the Friends in the City Foundation Award for Community Leadership. A strong proponent of education, Alderman Coleman graduated from Robert Morris University in 2007 with a Bachelor of Business Administration, majoring in Management and Business Law, and matriculated to Spertus Institute for Jewish Leadership, graduating in 2014 with a Master of Science degree in Nonprofit Management. LaToya Greenwood, Illinois State Representative, 114th District. Born and raised in East St. Louis, LaToya is an advocate in the state capitol for the many issues faced by residents of the Metro East area. She has sponsored and co-sponsored bills on issues focused on social justice, equity, and opportunity, specifically centered around job creation, economic growth, education funding, minimum wage, reproductive health, maternal and infant mortality, and access to health care. In the 102nd General Assembly, she will be chairing the Healthcare Availability and Access Committee. Greenwood attended Michigan State University, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Greenwood's passion and devotion to her community inspired her to come back to East St. Louis and make a difference as a public servant. She furthered her education at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, where she received her master's degree in public administration and policy. Her mission as a state legislator is to build stronger community in her district through improving the access to healthcare for all Illinoisans, providing quality and equitable education for all children, and ensuring public safety for residents. Kandice Harris, Midwest Regional Director, Run for Something. Sora Kandice Harris is a native of Mobile, Alabama, and a graduate of the University of Alabama, where she was initiated into the Theta Sigma chapter in fall 2009. Kandice moved to Chicago in 2012 and obtained her Juris Doctor degree from Loyola University Chicago School of Law in 2015. Since graduating, Kandice has become an experienced advocate and political organizer, specializing in movement politics, legislative advocacy, fundraising, voter mobilization, and political consulting for progressive campaigns. She currently serves as the Midwestern Regional Director for Run for Something, a national progressive political action committee that helps young Democrats run for state and local office. Kandice is a firm believer in the power of grassroots and community-driven campaigns. She is especially honored to be included among this dynamic group of sorors, as she is passionate about promoting and supporting Black women running for office and leading political campaigns. Because of this passion, Kandice created the Women of Color Empowering Campaigns Initiative to encourage and support women of color who are pursuing a career in political campaign leadership. In her spare time, Kandice enjoys cheering on the Alabama Crimson Tide football team, traveling post-pandemic, cooking, and raising money for Black women running for office. Toy Hutchinson, Senior Advisor to Governor Pritzker. Toy Hutchinson served as an Illinois Senator representing the 40th District from 2009 to 2019. During her time in the Senate, Hutchinson championed a variety of causes, including protecting women and children from violence, modernizing the state's tax structure, and legalizing cannabis. Prior to leaving the Senate, she served as the 46th president of the National Conference of State Legislatures for the 2018-2019 cycle. Toy is an original co-sponsor of the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, the most equity-centric law in the nation to legalize adult use cannabis, making Illinois the first state to pass adult use legislation through the legislative process and centering equity in all areas of the policy. The CERTA serves as a model for the legislation and decriminalization or legalization and decriminalization of cannabis, utilizing a three-pronged approach focusing on diversification of the industry, community reinvestment, and comprehensive criminal justice reform for communities hardest hit by the war on drugs. In 2019, former Senator Hutchinson was appointed by Governor J.B. Pritzker as the senior advisor to the Governor for Cannabis Control, commonly referred to as the czar, as the first African-American woman in the country to hold this statewide post. Toy earned a Bachelor of English degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a law degree from Northern Illinois University College of Law. She resides in Olympia Fields with her husband, with whom she shares 3 adult children. Donna Miller, Cook County Commissioner. Donna Miller is currently the Cook County Commissioner of the 6th District and serves as Vice Chair of Contract Compliance, Workforce Development and Veterans Committees, and Chairman of the Forest Preserve District Contract Compliance Committee. She has a background as a healthcare consultant working with leading pharmaceutical and biotech companies. Donna has tremendous experience in sales, training and development, and bringing together collaborations for new business and healthcare companies. Over her career, she has had responsibility for large volume accounts and led many cross-functional projects over a wide range of courses, including webcasts, week-long programs, workshops, and online training. Her training experience includes consultative selling skills, negotiation, and presentation skills. She has received numerous awards and recognition for her professional accomplishments. Donna has been involved with community, civic, and political activities throughout her life, including an internship on Capitol Hill, Red Cross volunteer, and working in communities disproportionately affected by HIV/AIDS and sickle cell. Notably, she was instrumental in bringing together government providers and advocate stakeholders to include cystic fibrosis in newborn screening in Illinois. Commissioner Miller's political involvement includes membership on the League of Women Voters, serving on the board of Planned Parenthood in Illinois, second vice president of Illinois Democratic Women, and former president of Democratic Women in the South Suburbs. She was a candidate for state senator in 2012. During the 2016 presidential election, Donna was part of the Illinois delegation during the Democratic National Convention, serving on the Rules Committee in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Tau Omega Chapter. Donna is also often asked to speak to students as a mentor and role model, and is truly passionate about empowering the youth to realize a significant future. She is married to the Honorable Dr. David E. Miller and has 2 boys. Kim Neely Dubuclet, Commissioner, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Kimberly Neely Dubuclet has been an elected member of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago Board of Commissioners since November 2018. As a native resident of the South Side and a lifelong Chicagoan, she is proud to serve the residents of Cook County. Commissioner Dubuclet previously served as a representative in the Illinois General Assembly, where she represented the 26th District, where she was recognized by and achieved an award from the Illinois Environmental Council for consistently voting with the Environmental Caucus. As a commissioner, her focus is on increasing awareness of environmental justice issues throughout the Cook County and to work to increase open green space for communities while providing additional green infrastructure opportunities for water conservation. She also works to fulfill the mission to protect our water supply, improve the quality of water in our waterways, and to protect businesses and residences from flood damage across Cook County. Commissioner Buclet attended the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools for high school and graduated from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Marketing. She finished her education by earning a Master in Business Administration from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Commissioner Buclet is active in numerous community organizations, including Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Links Incorporated, the Girlfriends Incorporated, the Museum of Contemporary Art Women's Board, Quad Cities Development Corporation Board, former member of Jack and Jill, and former AIDS Foundation of Chicago board member. Erika Weaver, Mattoon Community Unit School District School Board member. Erika C. Weaver currently serves in her first term on the Mattoon Community Units School District 2 Board of Education. Elected in 2017, she has served as board representative on the Curriculum Coordinating and Technology Committees. She has also served on the executive boards of CASA of East Central Illinois and American Association of Single Parents Incorporated. As single mom of 3, who raised her children while earning her associate, bachelor's, master's, and Juris Doctor degrees, issues concerning children and families remain close to her heart and serve as a catalyst for her public service. Over the years, she has conducted research on the impact of abject poverty on student achievement, sexual assault on college campuses, and restorative practices. Her combined experiences as a public defender, K-12 substitute teacher, college and law school faculty, and community volunteer allows her to see the community needs from a unique perspective. In her personal time, she can be found enjoying good food and laughs with her children, Kylan, Taylor, and Morgan, along with the family pup babies, Carson and Mocha. Last, but by no means least, Melverta Wilkins, Director of Flourish PAC. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins is a lifelong resident of Decatur, Illinois. She is the wife of Tony A. Wilkins and the mother of grown children, Brittany Wilkins of Decatur and Marquise Wilkins of Houston, Texas. Tony and Melverta have 3 grandchildren, Caden, Kaylee, and Caleb, all of Decatur. Mrs. Wilkins serves diligently in her community. She is the founder of a nonprofit 501c3 organization, Sister Girls and Friends Incorporated. This organization targets at-risk women and girls, providing mentoring, camaraderie, core building, self-esteem building, life skills, and so much more. Sister Girls and Friends will impact the community one woman, one girl at a time. Mrs. Wilkins also serves on the ministry team at House of Miracles Pentecostal in Decatur, Illinois. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, initiated October 15, 2000 in New Omicron Omega chapter in Springfield, Illinois. She is a charter member of the Decatur chapter, Chi Xi Omega. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins was the president to assist the chartering of Tau Iota at Millikan University in Decatur. Mrs. Wilkins has served as regional communications for Cluster 4 and 5 and currently serving as Cluster 4 coordinator under the leadership of Central Regional Director Sonia L. Bowen. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins is the executive director of Flourish PAC, an organization formed to assist women of color running for office. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins is a 2007 graduate of Illinois Women in Leadership and is a lifelong member serving actively. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins recently retired from Caterpillar Incorporated after a 20-year career and is the owner of Lucy Loft and Company, LLC, located in Decatur, Illinois, and runs several small businesses. She wants to be referred to as, quote, serial entrepreneur, respectfully. Mrs. Melverta Wilkins received her MBA from the University of St. Francis Joliet with certificate in supply chain management, as well as a master's in training and development. Melverta Wilkins adopts a quote from Maya Angelou: "My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style." With that, we turn it over to Dr. Pamela Smoot.
Good afternoon, sorors and guests. First, I would like to pay homage to the late Dr. Rosalind Terborg Penn, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, for her outstanding book called African American Women in the Struggle for the Vote, 1850 to 1920. This book brought to the forefront their roles in the movement, the challenges they faced of racism and sexism, and their contributions to women gaining the right to vote. The suffrage movement began in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848 with the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote, named in honor of Susan B. Anthony, a white woman suffragist leader. The suffrage movement was in three waves: before 1860, the post-Civil War, and then the turn of the century, which is the 1900s, representing the third wave of women suffragists. All three waves involved active campaigns to gain the right to vote. I'm going to start with some slides here. We have the movers and shakers, pioneers of the suffrage movement. So first of all, we have Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who wrote protest poetry referencing voting rights. And one of the things she said was, as much as white women need the ballot, Black women need it more. In the middle, we have Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, who was the founder of the Women's Era Club in Boston and one of the founders of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. And to your far right, there's Sarah Redmond, and Sarah toward the Northeast campaigning for universal suffrage. Next slide. Then we have the notorious Ida B. Wells, who was the founder of the Alpha Suffrage Club. And this club was mostly responsible for the election of Oscar DePriest as Chicago's first Black alderman. And Susan B. Anthony referred to her as the most respected woman suffragist in the country. Next slide. Nannie Helen Burroughs urged the support of the National Baptist Convention for Women's Suffrage. Next slide. Here we have ready for the 1913 National Women's Suffrage Parade in Washington, D.C. Next slide. Now we have our sisters posing for the cause. They look like they're getting ready to take care of some serious business. Now we have Black women created suffrage organizations all across the country. So here we have women from Montgomery, Alabama. Next slide. Oregon, way out west. Then we have Tennessee. And then next we have women from California. Black women's organizations were also active in the women's suffrage movement, including the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which was founded in 1896, and it mobilized women for the suffrage movement on local county, and state federations. Next slide. We have Mary McLeod Bethune, who was part of FDR's Black Cabinet, FDR meaning Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And she was over the NYA, and she was also instrumental in the founding of the National Council of Negro Women. Next slide. We have a young Mary Church Terrell and an older one. One of the things she said was, and I quote, she reminded white women that to exclude Black women from voting because of race was like excluding white women because of their gender. Next slide. Sojourner Truth attempted to vote in Battle Creek, Michigan, but was denied. Next slide. Madam C.J. Walker, the hair care queen and first African-American millionaire and philanthropist, supported all movements associated with African-Americans and especially women. Next slide. Harriet Tubman was a warrior on all fronts related to African-American women and the race. Next slide. Mary Ann Shadd Cary attempted to vote in Washington, D.C., but she was instrumental in organizing the Colored Women's Progressive Franchise Association in 1880. And she argued that the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution apply to women as well as men. Next slide. Here we have a sample ballot where women are soliciting support for the right to vote. Next slide. Sarah Raymond was a physician and spoke at the National Women's Rights Convention, and she was a member of the Equal Rights Association. Next slide. Anna Julia Cooper wrote about challenges and opportunities facing African-American women, and she was a noted club woman and feminist, as well as a noted scholar and member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Next slide. Charlotte Fortin was active in the women's rights movements. And to the right is Harriet Purvis, who organized the Philadelphia Suffrage Association. Next slide. Here we have a handbill, is what they were called during this particular period, advertising the Black Women's Suffrage Parade. Next slide. All right, this is Daisy Lampkin, and Daisy Lampkin rallied for voting rights, becoming the vice chair for both the Colored Voters Division of the Republican Party and the Negro Voters League of Pennsylvania. To the right is Harry Q. Brown. Brown was the founder of the Colored Women's League in Washington, D.C., and she spoke at the Republican National Convention in 1924 and later directed a campaign work among African-American women for president for Calvin Coolidge. Next slide. Here's Shiro, Fannie Lou Hamer, who took many brutal beatings for the right to vote. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, you can see some of the damage that was done. But Fannie Lou Hamer was a staunch, avid supporter of voting rights and was part of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in Mississippi. Next slide. We all know who this is, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And what I have to say about her is that Harris has paved the way with the help of other Black women who mobilized on her behalf. For women of color engaging in politics, she has let us know that it does not stop here and will not stop here. Thank you. Are there any questions?
You can begin the panel discussion.
All right, so the question is, how will the growing political power of women remake American politics?
Is it
Donna,
open to anyone?
yes, please go ahead,
Okay.
Flora Greenwood.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be a part of this esteemed panel, and especially with you, Soror, Dr. Smoot, Michigan State. Okay. So the system, I believe, SOAR Lieutenant Governor Juliana, she kind of laid it out for us, but the system as we know it will be changed. And there is a reconstruction of sorts, I believe, going underway now. We could look at our own Democratic Party in Illinois with under new leadership with Chairwoman Robin Kelly. And we will see a significant shift in the way women are viewed in this political space and the role of women that we will have moving us forward. We know that women have been the voice of the people, the voice of the marginalized, the voice of those who have historically not been heard. And so I think we will see more diversity, more inclusiveness, and more of our voice being heard as we move forward. This is a historic time for all of us, and specifically for Black women. And we can move the state and country forward if we continue to work together.
Thank you.
I'll jump in if we're just going as we want to. Okay, thank you, Sora. So I just wanted to add to that. I do think it's important for us to recognize that when we do look at numbers of people who vote, which we all do when we run for election, and we all know who's voting, it's always been Black women voting. We have carried the Democratic Party not only across the country, but we know even our own geographies. And I'm proud that Sora Stephanie Coleman mobilized young people, but we do have to mobilize more young people to get out to vote if we want to have the same momentum moving forward. Every precinct matters, every vote matters, but we can't rely on the same people who've been voting for the last 30 years. And those are the people who carry the Democratic Party, and they're Black, and most are seniors, and we need to get middle-aged people and young people to build the numbers up and increase that, because that's how we're going to have a political infrastructure and power base.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'll have to agree with you, Sora Miller. And what I want to add to that is with this growing political power in the remake of American politics, it's the seat at the table for me, Soars, right? And panelists, because now we have a seat at the table. We're making policies. We're making processes. People are listening. They're taking heed to what we're saying. So that right there in itself is giving us that political power that we need to make it to that next level. What we have to do, as you stated, is grow on that momentum. And that momentum, to me, may be looking at more opportunities for us to build sisterly relationships with others and to help build up those others, because the time is definitely now, and we are in that make of that growing political power. But we have to get that seat at the table and more seats at the table, because as we get those seats, things will change. As we get those things will increase. And this country is going to be better, because if there's an AKA anywhere, things are going to just take the whole next level of being that. And that's what this country needs. And I'm joking, but women, period. We get things done, and can't nobody act like we don't. So that this whole political movement right now is definitely something, and like I said, it's the seat at the table for me. Let's get more and more seats and more seats, we can take over too. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. So I just wanted to put that out there.
You make me feel like I want to run for political office.
You better, Dr. Smoot.
I love it.
All right, I'm going to move
I
on.
love it. I was just gonna say, can I jump in on this one piece,
sure.
Dr.
Yes.
I love that, like Sora Melverta and Sora Donna, we know that there's a couple of different things that we also need to keep in mind, I think, as women that are watching this thing, because right now, we're in this moment where a lot of people expect things to happen immediately. And, there's no other group of people than Black women who could tell you the history of the struggle and the history of the times when we were in the struggle without making the newspaper, without being highlighted, without people really knowing, what our names were, like telling the story of how we got to where we are right now. I draw strength at, like the Alabama bus boycott happened because they had a conversation at a table of the treasurer of the NAACP in her kitchen when they were talking about, like, what would happen if we just didn't ride the bus? Like, what would happen? And the fact that we are, so we did the phone trees and we packed the lunches and we organized the marches and we did all those things where most of the men got the credit and the notoriety and the name recognition and all that stuff. And now we're moving into this phase where there's this moment in time where we're being highlighted, and we need to be aware of the backlash that comes with that. And the understanding that, like, when I think about the work that I'm doing right now, and I think about what happens when you break new ground, the closest analogy I have is when you put the jackhammer in the ground at the first time. Like, when that happens and you break the concrete, there's dust, there's debris, there's rocks, it's loud, it's messy, it's all of those things. And we can't be afraid of that. We cannot be afraid of that. We can't use those moments to be like, well, I can't do it, it's too hard, I can't. People are saying negative things, people are saying mean things, because we have always been the thing that withers the storms as we push our communities forward, whether people were watching or not. And I want us to be really clear about that there's nothing new about the role that we're playing right now, even though people are realizing it. There's nothing new about magic that we are. But the reason there is a thing called Black girl magic is because Black women work. We do the work, and the work is hard. And sometimes a lot of people have heard me talk about, like, any leader just needs three things. You need a wishbone, a jawbone, and a backbone. You need to be able to keep hoping and dreaming. Like, we know Congressman Lewis was beaten on that bridge 55 years ago. And we also know what George Floyd was about 55 years ago. We didn't think we'd be having this same conversation right now in the space that I'm in. We're trying to dismantle 87 years of horrible policy that destroyed whole communities. And we know that's not going to be on one bill the first time in your first effort out. It's just not. We have to be strong enough to hold to hold ground and to let people know we ain't new to this. We true to this. And we have always been, when it doesn't work, when it's hard, when we have to keep fighting, we have always been at the forefront and the crux of that. So this moment may feel fresh, but really, we've always been here. It's just the world waking up to the fact that we've always been here. And on that, this lost year, this 2020 thing, like, if 2020 means anything, is perfect vision. And if this year taught us anything, it's time for us to see things differently. It's our turn to see things differently and to force people to see us differently. And that is, I think, the most beautiful thing that came out of the fact that this year was so devastating in so many different ways, because it's the first time in all of our lives that 2020 actually is hindsight. 2020, for the first time in all of our lives, is hindsight gone. So what did we learn? Who are we now? Who do we want to be? Because the magic of all of this stuff that's centered in Black girl magic is not how bad it is right now. It's what we want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And the fact that when it comes down to it seriously, we've always been there, we will still be there, and there's no way this country's moving forward without us, because we are seen differently now. And it's about damn time. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you for that powerful statement. All right, the next question is, why is it important that women have full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision-making in political, economic, and public life?
So when I think about this question, I know we've talked a lot about, like, the different ways that Black women have been a part of the political life. We vote, we march, we protest, we show up. But one of the things that I particularly do is I help Black women run for office, particularly Black women under 40 running for the first or second time. And what that question means to me is that it's time for us to be able to have equal opportunity to represent our communities in legislative office. So we did this statistic earlier this year, and we found doing some research at Run for Something, and we found out that out of all the state legislatures across the country, Black women only make up 4.29% of that. And when you think about the amount of work that we are doing, it really becomes adamant that we have to create some different ways to be able to make sure that we're able to serve in elected office. So those are one of the things that I think is like really important, because like I said, we are working on every different level, but we have to make sure that we're, as a few people have already mentioned in this panel today, having a seat at the table. And that starts with being able to be elected in leadership of the communities that we're already working in.
Can I add to that? Thank you, Soror. That women in leadership tend to be much more thoughtful and less reactive. And so on a global level, if there were more women leaders of countries, I believe there would be fewer wars. We tend to think through things and to collaborate more than men. So it's really important to have a seat at the table, to get our perspective, to get our input, because we look at things different. We think through things differently, and we need to be there to balance out some of the other energy that's oftentimes in leadership.
If I can, I think that was a perfect segue, because we do look at things differently, and we know that women have personal roles in our communities, right? We're the caregivers. We're the ones going to our PTA meetings. We're the ones cooking and cleaning and doing all of these things. So we know a variety of needs within the community, things that most people don't see. We see all of it. We hear all of the private conversations. We are in those spaces, and oftentimes because we are not seen, we hear more than people want us to. And so I think it's important that we be able to represent all of those things on all of those levels, but also to Sora Toy's point of being seen. So I don't know about where everyone else is, but I'm in a community that's 95% Caucasian. And so it is important that even for communities that don't look like me, to still see me and to still see us and our excellence and our work and our ambition. And all of those things that we do exceptionally well that most people don't see and don't understand. Oftentimes we are the only voice in a lot of spaces. And that's why it's really important that we are there, and that we are honest, and that we are bold, and we are brilliant, and believe in ourselves, right? And so that's why we need to have each of us in a space, in our respective space, whatever that is, on all levels.
And also, to go to what Soror Kandice said, that is the second time in less than a week, Soror Kandice, that I've heard that statistic about how underrepresented we are. And so if we all agree, and the world agrees, whether they want to admit it or not, that there needs to be change. So you can't keep doing what you've been doing with the other 97% that it's always been. So if you want change, then we have to be that change, because it's always been a white male driven environment. So we want to change some things and systemically change some things. So obviously it can't still be the 97%. And so as a result, we have to come in as women of color, and make those changes, bring those ideas, push forward, and just make sure that we're seen, like we're all saying, and that we're heard, because we're going to bring the ideas that haven't been for 200 years. I and Soror LaToya, we're in a community that is not 95% non-minority, but at the same time, we still have to be where we are, because it took 220 years for there to be a woman circuit clerk in our county. In the 2010 census, we were 33% African-American in St. Clair County. It took 203 years to have a circuit clerk that was a person of color. And so as a result, even though you have communities that have East St. Louis and Cahokia and Allerton and all in Cook County and things of that nature, you still have to make sure that you push to be seen, heard, and represented, because there are so many times that even in communities that look like you, you're still not represented.
Okay, how can we promote women's political participation?
Well, I'll go. So I think things like this help promote women's political participation, just by seeing other women in different levels of government, which is really a key. We have to be in every different level of government to make the impact. Even with those low numbers, we can make the change collectively if we're all unified around a certain policy, around a certain issue. And issue-based politics hasn't been enough of a forefront for Black women because we're just trying to get out there and make sure we vote, which is an issue. I mean, not to say that's not, that is an issue. We have to vote. But if we took an issue and ran with it, that's what would change different, like what Toy's doing, what Sora Toy's doing. That's what changes the structure of what the policies look like. But we need policymakers also. We need to get into office and we need someone to help us with the policies. We don't have enough African-American policy directors. We don't have enough African-American, not only fundraisers and to help us get to office and keep us in office, but we also need to have a collective strategy of what that policy looks like. We also need to join, I mean, this is excellent. I'm so excited to be on this panel because we represent the entire state. We have similar issues, similar focus, and represent huge numbers of people. Imagine what we could do if we all got behind one big policy. It would change whatever happens here and it catapulted to whatever could happen across the country and beyond. But we have to have these kind of conversations. We also have to dig lower, and I'm focused on the next generation, like who's got next? How do we make sure that our young people are empowered enough to run for office? I always say empowered women empower women. We are the empowered women to empower the next group of women, but we got to do it. We got to help them get there, show them what to do, and then the young people have to listen because some people do know what they're talking about. It might be a new way of doing it, but collectively we can figure it out.
Hey, Donna, can I also add all that is true? But the biggest thing, I think, having run for office several times, one of the biggest obstacles I believe women have to overcome is raising money. So if we can somehow get I know Flourish PAC helps to raise money for African-American candidates, but you could have the best candidate in the world with the best message, the best campaigner, but if they don't have money to help support their campaign, more times than not, they're not going to win. So we need to figure out a way to find women to run and to help them raise money so that they can be successful when they run.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to pop in on that one too, because that is one of the big one. It's one thing to say we're going to support women to run for office. We also have to do a much better job of helping show the whole ecosystem. Like, we want people to run for office. We also want them to be really strategic about what office to run for and when. And to not be surprised when you do run for office that everybody's not going to be for you. You got to be ready for that. Everybody can't be there every time you do this. You have to be ready for that. I know what it's like to be personally disappointed when people that I thought were going to be with me and weren't.
And you learn not to be disappointed because
you have to learn that. And then on the money thing, our friends and families, the circles of our friends and family, when I first started running for office, I raised the least amount of money from people who actually said they love me. Mm-hmm. Like our families are not accustomed to making political donations a part of the thing that they do. They're not accustomed to it. And I like telling the story of how, at the height of the traditional civil rights movement, what the entertainment community did, like who was funding all the, the trips on the road, the hotel rooms that you needed when you couldn't stay any other places. Like who are the people today that are actually putting the money up that have a whole bunch of money to empower Black leadership? But we have to get much more strategic about understanding that if you don't ask for money, somebody else is, and they're going to give it. It's not about you. It's not about you personally. Like you can start off. I used to tell people all the time, I'd rather have a root canal than ask you to give me a check. That's how I started. I ended with, I need $5,000. Can you get this to me? Because I knew it wasn't about me. It was about the work that we were trying to do. So if we come from a culture where we don't talk about money, we're raised not to brag, we're raised not to be, make everybody uncomfortable and remember to smile. Guys walking here like, I'm the best, I'm the next, I'm going to do this because they don't think about what their qualifications are. They don't think about any of the things that we constantly second guess ourselves on. We are ready, we are able, we are powerful, we are clear, we are perfectly primed to be able to do this, but we have to be able to understand that you can have the best message in the world, and if you don't have the money to communicate, nobody heard it. Nobody heard it. And that starts at our own kitchen tables. Donate to candidates and start making that a thing that we do, because we don't do that right now. And it matters at school board, for clerks, for, like, I started as a village clerk, for township offices, for when you decide to run for county board, countywide seats, for when you decide to run for the legislature or anything higher than that. But we need people to be filling up this bench all the way. Like, you don't have to pick the first job you get. You don't have to pick the highest thing on the totem pole. We need you on the school board. We need you in the local municipalities. We need you on
the library board, all those
library boards. It's like Kim doing amazing things on the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. When you say MWRD, everybody said people didn't even know what the MWRD was, but it's our water. We need all of us everywhere. And the only way to do it is to learn how to raise money and not be afraid of it. Ask for that, ask for your paper, boo-boo.
You all have heard of Emily's List. Until I started running, I didn't know that Emily's List actually stands for early money is like yeast. Emily, early money is like yeast. And so their whole concept is get your early money, get your fundraising going so that you can have a head start on your campaign.
And just to add to that, so I talk to young women running for office, and I've actually helped people with call time. And it's really about just changing your mindset around raising money, because like all of you have said, is absolutely important. It's one thing to ask somebody to step up and run for office and all the energy that goes behind that. But if we as a community don't stand behind them, you're asking a lot. And that's why sometimes we don't have people step up and run for office. But one little thing that I like to say to folks when it comes to changing your philosophy around that is that you're not asking for the money for yourself. You're asking for folks to invest in your shared future and vision of a better community that you're going to actually help affect when you are elected to run for office. So it's really about changing your mindset. But I agree with every single thing you all said. And I also agree that we as sorors too, when our sorors get it ready to step up and run for office, we have to be able to support them as well, because we are our network of folks and we should be our closest supporters. And it shouldn't be hard for us to be able to call each other and just ask for even those small dollar donations, because they really do mean a lot.
And I was just going to add, for like organizations like SORA or Kandice, making sure that we know about it and promote it. I didn't know about your organization and the things that you're doing to support women who want to run for office, and other organizations like I Will. And I think some of the panelists here have benefited from I Will and graduated from that program. And so it's just about providing that information and resources for the women who are interested in taking this lead.
Okay, so Stephanie, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, and if I may also add, thank you, Representative Greenwood and Sora Candace, Roll Tide, by the way. Even when running for office, because definitely when God created the woman, right? And especially when he created the Alpha Kappa Alpha woman, he created a new and different, the first and different. But even when there are some women and some of us who have the desire to serve, Clerk Clay and Representative Weaver, I know you all are not of Cook County, but I represent Inglewood, one of the poorest. We get the black eye for Chicago. And I want little Black girls and Black boys to know that growing up in Inglewood, you're still smart, capable, competent. You can serve. Even if you want to be an alderman, if you want to be the mayor, we have seen Black women like Cook County Board President Tony Pretwinkle, Commissioners Kim Buclet and Miller, Senator Hutchinson, and so many, Juliana, our Lieutenant Governor, but you can be it. And we are tangible proof. And even in this virtual space to show that you can do it. But I also, for those who are not necessarily feel as though they're not the, the political type or to be in the public eye, but we need more of Candice Harris's. Candice, we need about 100 of you in Chicago, and I'm sure over in our other counties. But if we
downstate.
And downstate. But if we can prepare the next generation to become a part of the political process of knowing what goes on behind the scenes of what everyone sees, the mailers, the commercials, but how necessary it is. And Lord knows we need more Dr. Sora Pamela Smoots in this nation to give us the wisdom, but it's so necessary.
All right, we have a question from the floor. So the question is, so when you do get a seat at the table, what are some tips for expressing and saying the right things?
Ooh, can I take that one?
Yes, you may.
Because and I'm going to take that one because I also want to say Candice and I both went to the same law school, so we have good training. But when you get a seat at the table, you have to be who you are, right? You have to be honest and you have to be willing to say those things. And I know there's another question about being comfortable. It's not going to always be comfortable. The truth isn't comfortable. In fact, that's the purpose of it, is to make us uncomfortable so that we can change things and we can repair things and we can rebuild things. And so when you get there, you have to just tell the truth. What we didn't add into my bio is, although I am on the school board in my other election, I didn't win that one, but because of the consistency in my constitution, I've been asked to be on the DPI transition committee. That's a seat at the table. It's not out front, but it's huge to be there and in that space and be able to communicate with people about how things move forward and about all of the populations that feel ignored and unheard and unseen. And so some of the very things that we're talking about are things that I should be able to communicate in that space and do it confidently, even though it won't be very comfortable. And so when you get into those spaces, you tell your truth. That's why you're there. They didn't ask you to come in and do anything else, to be anybody else. They invited you there, or you got there being who you are. And so I would say, know who you are and establish that up front. Know what your boundaries are up front, because people will challenge that every time. And you need to know what's a deal breaker for you. You need to know what you're there for. And if you're there for the purpose of serving people, then you serve people. If you're there for anything else, it won't work out.
Thank you. How do women navigate power structures? I know you all are thinking really hard.
Well, I'm going to say by being authentically yourself. Like there's a benefit right now to, you know, this, again, like this moment in time. People are looking for, you know, those of us who have the ability to speak for all of us, as if Black folks and women are all monolithic, you know, like how many times, like it's been amazing. Almost all my board services right now where they're not, you know, like where there's, well, I'll just say it, like when there are a whole lot of white people. And then I get the question like, well, what do Black people think? And could you just explain to us? And you know, and after all of this stuff, I kept saying, I can't swim through your tears to get to mine. I need you to do some reading. I need you, like, there's lots of books on this. It's okay for you to do some research. This is not new information. It's not fair of you all to ask the minute we walk into the room to be the Black people whisperer and hold up everybody to make you feel more comfortable. Like that is another form of trauma for us. Like just, and it's constantly, you know, a triggering thing. But the understanding that you have a right to be in that room. You have a right to be in the room. And if your voice is not in the conversation, then the conversation's incomplete. And that starts with understanding that that's a fact. It's a reality and you don't have to hide from it. So, you know, these moments where, you know, we're learning to not be the angry woman and not be the, you know, like all the stereotypes that come for strong Black women in spaces like this, all that's being like kind of thrown out the window. So when you navigate these spaces, the first thing I think we all need to be thinking about is the fact that we have every right to be in these spaces. And we all know what it's like to hear a conversation and not see ourselves represented in that conversation. And gone are those days. Social media is a game changer. Our ability to communicate into multiple people at a really big time, you know, in this fashion as a game changer. And so I've always found it much more helpful to recognize when I'm feeling that thing called the imposter syndrome. Like, how did I Forrest Gump my way into this? How am I sitting here? How did I Forrest Gump my way into this? And I didn't Forrest Gump my way into this. I earned my right into this. I earned my seat at the table. I earned my voice. And there's nothing more powerful than a woman who finds her voice. And there's nothing more dangerous than when you try to take it away once I found it. So when you navigate these structures, it does start from an owning. Like I used to talk to my daughter who's a dancer. And I remember I was a dance mom. I would come in and go, Cameron, why are you in the back? And I remember my little girl being 8 years old, told me emphatically, like put her shoulders back, stood up, told me emphatically, Mommy, they'll see me wherever I am. And I stopped, like, praise Black God, praise baby Black Jesus. Because it wasn't something I actually told her, but what I got from that was it was something that I modeled for her. And it was just as important for her to get that as it was for my boys to understand that you don't need to be afraid of a strong, powerful, articulate, intelligent, opinionated Black woman. You celebrate that. But we have to accept that. Don't shrink, don't shirk, don't apologize. Be you, unapologetically you, because you deserve it and you earned it.
I love that, Sora Toy. That's excellent. I just wanted to add just one other thing to everything, because you said it so eloquently. But once we do speak, and I know all of us have been in rooms where men overspeak us, and it's not just white men, it's all men, or they just say something that you just say, you're like, didn't I just say that? And then you're like, oh, okay, so we're just restating the obvious here. That's what I call it. We restate the obvious, like, well, I just said it, but then he said it louder, or he said it with more gumption, but was the exact same thing. So it's a practice, and every group that I've ever talked to that are groups of women knows that happens probably to us every single day. So how do we take our power back and make sure that we're experts, but not aggressive or emotional or get our feelings hurt? But when you're expert in your conversation, that also comes through, and it does take practice. Sometimes you have to just look in the mirror and say, how am I going to say this? I just remember, like, before the Super Bowl, this is just an example of practice. Jennifer Lopez was practicing how to whip that microphone. I mean, I was like, oh, she practiced that? Oh, okay. Like, she was like this, and she kept doing it over and over and over again, so it was natural. So we think she just knows how to do that, but no, she practiced that with the microphone 100 times and the ponytail twist, about 100 times. But that's how you get it right. So we have to practice. How are we going to say this before our board meeting? How are we going to come to the meeting and we know they're going to ask something about ABCD? How are we going to answer that question and go point by point by point, because we own the expertise, as Toy was saying.
All right, now I have a question from the floor. Please speak to those women who may not have the formal education, but have a desire to serve the community in elected office.
You don't have to have a degree to run for office. You just need to have great ideas, be willing to put yourself out there. And as we said earlier, having enough people that are going to support you and back you both financially, emotionally, because it does take a toll on your family when you run for office. So you need all the support you can get. And there are plenty of people who are in elected office that don't have college degrees, that don't have master's degrees or law degrees, but they have passion and they have ideas and they have the heart to do it. So whatever your education level is should not deter you from running for office.
And that, again, is the difference between men and women. Men don't think they need a degree. Women do.
Right. Or qualifications or any of those things. I said, they're like, I'm next, I'm the best, I'm a do. They just walk in and say it. And we're like, who's going to watch the kids? How am I going to raise this money? How am I going to pull this all together? Who's going to help me? Rutgers has data that says it takes normally 5 times approaching a woman to run for office before she'll do it. That's a very, it's just, we come to this from a different place. And it is a very, very different, it takes, as Donna was saying, it takes practice. because it's uncomfortable sometimes to walk in and be like, I don't want to feel like I'm necessarily bragging. And it was another one of those mother-daughter moments. And I told her, I was like, you're not bragging, you're telling the truth. You can stand up and tell the truth. Like, we have to own that, and we have to practice that. And it's okay to acknowledge that there's some parts of running for office and doing this in the public eye that are not comfortable. But I'm telling you, like, if they're whatever issues that you care about, if your voice isn't in there, then the conversation's not done. It's just not done. And I feel, I'm like, this is the sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. I got something to say. Because they're not going to wait to say, oh, let me pause this and say, so Donna, or Erika, or Kim, or Stephanie, do you have something to say? And none of the women that's on this call right now wait to be asked what to say. Not none of us. But I know we didn't all we may not have all come out the womb like that. Maybe my special little Sora Stephanie came out the room like that. I think she might have always been like this. I think she might. Sora Stephanie, I think you might have always been like this. Something tells me.
Is she right?
You're like, you know what? I'm a daughter of Inglewood, like at 2. She could talk and she would say it. But all of us need to get to the point where we're okay and comfortable owning our own space. It's a new space to be. But I'm telling you, the water is warm. The air is crisp. The sky is bluer. When you find your voice and you're comfortable in it, oh, that feels good. Oh, that feels good. Own it.
And Sora, Donna, you're absolutely right, because both of my opponents in 20 and in 16, they were both men. And Sora LaToya is very familiar with my opponent in 20 because he ran against her for state rep in 18. So the individual that ran against me in 20 was a male, and then an African-American male, and then in 16 was a Caucasian male. And like you said, they don't have to be qualified. They're just like, okay, I just wake up and I'm just going to do it. And so we have to understand, as the competent, qualified women that we are, and to the young woman that's saying, well, what if I don't have all of that accoutrement? You don't need it. Like Sora Kim said, you have to have the confidence, the will, the ideas, and the support. And then you just get up and you say, I'm going to do exactly what they've been doing for 200 years. I'm going to get up, I'm going to get my petitions, I'm going to make sure I get with somebody to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, challenge my petitions and kick me off the ballot. And I'm going to have all of my stuff together, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to go out there and I'll run my race just like they do. And you're going to win just like they did.
Oh, I swear I'm running for political office now.
Well, and I know, Sora Stephanie, even though I'm not living in Cook County now, I grew up in the suburbs of Cook County. I grew up in one of the poorer ones. I grew up in Markham. And so growing up, whether it's with poverty or a lack of a formal education, they will find a reason to say that you shouldn't be out there. So not having a formal education should not be your reasoning, to the Sora who presented the question, because there will always be a reason. I know Sora Toy talked about, being defined as being angry. And sometimes we have a reason to be angry, right? So they will find some narrative to give you and to drop on you and say, that's who you are, even if it's not who you are, it is not how you operate. But Sora Kahalah, was absolutely correct in no matter what, whether you have the education or not, make sure you find out, do the research on what you need to run for that particular office. Because what you need at a local level and what you need at a state level and what you need at a federal level, all different. All the pieces need to be different. How much money you need to raise, or if you need to raise money at all, it's all different. And so you may not have a lot of ballot challenges or petition challenges at the local level, but you're definitely going to have them once you start, looking for higher offices. And so you want to make sure that you talk to the necessary people, someone who knows politics, someone who knows the law for politics, someone who knows fundraising. Those things are so critical, whether you have a degree or not. And so just find someone that you can talk to people who are on the local school board or in those positions that you want to run for, because if you find a good person, they'll tell you what you need to know.
So I think one of the things that I would like to piggyback off of what everyone has said, but when you look at an organization like what Sora Kandice has put together, and we talk about how do we promote How do we promote each other? How do we promote women? That's a prime example how we connect people with the right people. So like, if you're wanting to run for office, I may have some infrastructure on how you should do it, but maybe I should say, hey, I've got some resources, but have your resources together. And you know what? Sora Kandice, she has a whole system where she can teach you, train you, get you prepared for what it is that you want to do. Flourish Pack has a training camp that they can help you with that. So knowing your resources, being able to capture that and to share is one of those biggest pieces of what we need to do. You don't have to have a degree to run for office, but have some purpose, right? So when I say that, I'm thinking about US Representative Lucy McBath, right? Somebody killed her son, and we will never have this happen to anyone else again. I'm gonna run and I'm gonna put some policies in place so that I can stop this, so no one else feels how I feel. And you know, we all have passion, right, for something. So taking that passion and putting feet to it and putting purpose to it and getting what Sora Erika said, enough people engaged in what it is that you feel and what it is that you want to do, and let's run with it. And there's enough women, even enough women on this panel, that if we all got in a huddle and put our heads together, we could probably put everybody we wanted in whatever office. But we've got, who was that, Sojourner Truth? She said if one woman turned the world up, all of us together, man, we could at least rotate it 90 degrees or something, right? So we can do that. So being able to do that and come together is what's gonna make that what we wanna get to, and building all those things that we said together. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
If there's a class, university certification to the Sora who asked the question to teach you how to serve and how to lead, you let me know. But I know that every Sora on this Zoom, on this panel, can attest that nothing will amount to faith and hard work. No one can teach you how to have faith, and definitely how to outwork that male, because I promise you, no one will outwork, outtalk, outthink any of us on this panel. And no one taught us but our mothers and strong Black women in our lives the essence of what hard work does, because we do have to work harder. We do have to walk and make phone calls, and there is hard work a part of this platform. But once you have it and once you get it, world, watch out.
I know that's right.
Woo. All right, now, are there issues around women's political leadership that concern you?
Just not enough women leaders. That would be an issue.
And it tends to be a sort of a divide between white women and women of color in terms of political leadership. And, you know, like Donna said earlier, that Black women have been the backbone of the Democratic Party, but really have not been treated as such. And I read a quote when I was getting prepared for this panel, and it says, when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And so I feel like we still need to have those difficult conversations around race and gender and political leadership within the women's space as we continue to move forward.
Sorry, LaToya, I agree with you. One of the things that, especially over this past year, was always in the media and a part of our discussions was the parity, right? There's a lack of parity, especially in politics, especially with the Democratic Party as it relates to Black women. And we show up time and time again, but we're always told to wait. Not right now, you're not electable, you know, you're not the right person for this or the right person for that. And it's what I call a bifurcation of our Black brilliance. Our brilliance is taken and the party and everyone benefits from it, but we're not in that space. We're not allowed or rewarded or acknowledged as we should be. And so I think that would be, as what we seem to all be agreeing on, is the biggest issue is there's a lack of parity when it comes to women and representation in politics.
And I was going to say too that, I mean, back to something I mentioned earlier that I think is really, we're just not as much unified around a couple of theme issues where we know whatever office we're in, that's our issue. Like Hispanics, the Hispanic caucus and Hispanic legislators, Hispanic commissioners, always focused on immigration on every level of government. Probably even on a school board. What's going to be, do we have everything bilingual? So what can we rally around that's our 1, 2, 3 issues on every level of government? And so if we could get a focus on that, I mean, even with just this panel right here, we would change whatever that number 1 is.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question for the sake of time. How do you prove in a predominantly male-dominated environment that you have leadership skills? I think you guys touched on that just a little bit, but that is the question.
I think the premise of the question, I don't think is correct. I don't think we have to prove anything. We are leaders.
I think that's simple enough. Right. So, Erika, what did you say?
I said, I was about to say, just we walk in and we sit down.
Yes.
Right. I was gonna say, show up and do you. That's
right. That's right.
Okay, how important is it to have a mentor to grow as a leader? And what are some of the steps to build that type of relationship?
Okay, on this one, I think we need to all, I think we all need to take very seriously that we are charged to lift as we climb. That, you know, like if any of us are in a situation where we are the first, you should go into that knowing that you can't be the last. I am really worried about, you know, kind of this feeling of we'll get people in positions of power. And I don't want us to emulate like kind of what men have done. It's like once you get there, you're protecting your spot at all costs, that you're not looking back to try to bring somebody up to be with you. It was that was one of the reasons why I thought really, really hard and strong when I got the opportunity to build a team in a hot, contentious subject matter area. Because look, when people talk about cannabis, it's never going to be an easy conversation. That I was intentional about choosing people, you know, choosing a young woman who is 10, 12 years younger than me, who is phenomenal, also a soror. I mean, literally phenomenal. And one of the things I said to her was when I was 34, I didn't have a woman like me in my life in the beginning of my career. And I will be that for you. You will know everything I know because it's my job to make sure that I pour into you. And I had people tell me, I know you like her, but you got to be rich. She might come for you one day. And I said, good. I want her to be ready. I want her to be ready. I want her to shine. I want that for her. I want that for our community. I want that for her. I am never, ever, ever worried when I'm in a room full of amazing women. I'm never worried about that. And like, I want to be surrounded by greatness. And if I'm always the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong rooms, because I cannot be the best me if I'm not around the best of who we are. Iron sharpens iron. That's the story of who we are. So when you have the opportunity to do it, you have to do it, because succession planning is real. And for all those times that nobody made a way for us, we have to be different for the young women coming up underneath us. And I believe that with all my whole heart and soul and body. I believe that when you get the chance, lift as you climb.
National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. Okay. Go ahead, Sora Erika. We just have a few more minutes.
I saw Sora Faith's note. This will be quick. One, I agree, Sora Toy. There's enough room at the finish line for everybody, right? Maybe you break the ribbon, but there's still enough room for all of us to cross. And we have to remember that. In terms of building the relationship, say what you mean and mean what you say. If you offer yourself to help somebody, help them. If you offer yourself to be a part of something or do something, do it. And don't offer something that you know you can't do. I don't tell people I can show up in places that I know I can't be, but if I say that I'll be there, right? And so that's how you build a relationship. Demonstrate yourself to be someone that can be counted on and trusted, and do quality work. And if you are sincere and authentic, those relationships will just automatically develop.
All right, well, go ahead, Stephanie.
And when you are blessed to have a mentor, and especially to young people, be intentional and have a spirit of humility to serve, because we don't know it all. If you're not learning, you're not living, but be humble in serving and growing and not questioning. You know, I come from the church where we don't question our elders, but learn and understand why is it that you've been gifted with this task to do what the chairman has said. You may not understand it, but you'll appreciate it later on. As they say, Dr. Smoot, keep living.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think our time is up. Sora, this has just been absolutely marvelous. And anybody who has not been inspired by what has gone on today, something is obviously wrong. Thank you so very much. It's been great. Love you.
On behalf of the GKO Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I want to thank our special guest, Lieutenant Governor Mrs. Juliana Stratton, and all of our Illinois legislature sisters, Mrs. Clay, Mrs. Coleman, Mrs. Buclet, Mrs. Greenwood, Mrs. Harris, Ms. Hutchinson, Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Weaver, and Mrs. Wilkins. Our moderators, Dr. Pamela Smoot and Faith Miller, and our guests. Yes to all of the Black women magic that our panelists displayed. I hope that you are all as inspired as I am. Specifically, I would like to recognize GKO's very own Jessica Edmond, event chairman, for putting this fabulous event together, embracing and recognizing these great women. So special shout out to you, Jessica. We appreciate your hard work, your dedication, and sacrifices in making this event successful. Also, I would like to thank the Carbondale Public Library for moderating and facilitating this collaborative event. Lastly, I would like to thank our very special guest, my sorority sister, Kiana Davis, Central Region Representative to the Investigation Committee, my sorority sister, Camille Davidson, first Black woman and Dean of SIU School of Law here in Carbondale. Dr. Linda Flowers, President of the Carbondale branch of NAACP, Carbondale City Councilwoman Carolyn Harvey, Liz Hunter, Jackson County Treasurer, Jessica Edmond, and Tamiko Mueller, members of the Jackson County Board. Dr. Linda Baker with the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute, and all of the Divine Nine for attending and supporting our event today. I want to send a special shout out to the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for attending this event today. Happy Women's History Month to all of the women. Continue to be glass ceiling breakers, social advocates, and leaders in all that you do. To all of our guests, thank you for your continued support for all of GKO's programs, scholarships, and events. Please be sure to be on the lookout for future events that GKO will host. I hope everyone has a safe and productive weekend. Good evening and be safe. Thank you all for attending.